is an actress, model, and activist, to come up and to introduce Shonda Buchanan, who is a poet, writer, and professor. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Anita Padilla. I'm a model, an actress, but most importantly, I am an activist. Testimony to this author. She is a poet, an educator, a writer of fiction and non-fiction, and is the literary editor of Harriet Tubman Press. You would say this performer uses education to pave ways to freedom for a whole new generation of people of color. Among other things, she is a professor at Law University. She's also an international speaker. Prize nominee for the Pulitzer. I'm just looking at her so I don't mispronounce anything. Her memoir, Black Indian, won the 2020 News Hour are the top 20 books to read about institutional. For the Black Caucus of American Library Association and the Library of Virginia. All this, she is a teaching artist and a mentor with a line of residencies to her name. Today, this veteran journalist and African American culture expert takes the stage to speak for Black women gone before us, and in so doing, she speaks for us who remain and for those yet to come. Performing this poem for the very first time for Essence, please welcome with me all the way from the land of Tonka in Los Angeles, the incomparable Shonda Buchanan.
Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful room. Like Alice Walker, all these beautiful flowers. It's incredibly gorgeous. So, I am an international speaker. I'm a professor. I'm a poet, and all of that combined to me means storyteller. So the poem that I'm going to read for you today is a living poem. I was talking with Jackie at Oxfam, and I have to say thank you so very much to Oxfam for reaching out to me and to the Black Women's Roundtable for allowing me to speak today, and particularly read this poem. And I say it's a living poem because something happens every day, or something happens every other day, and it concerns us with our collective selves, right? Our collective memory, our histories. And so I find myself always adding a line to this poem, and I actually added one this morning. So you'll see what line I added this morning. I want to ask you to just take a moment to read without clinking And we love you guys over there, we love you. But just a moment to just take a breath and center yourselves and hold all of our sisters. If you knew my true name, to take me stardust through the wind, stardust, Black woman, for Breonna Taylor, Nia Wilson, Latasha Harlan, Eula Mae Love, Sandra Bland, and all my sisters who have crossed over unnecessarily, and as always for my mother. The breath, sycamore spores and black girlhood calcified in a copper memory. Inhale, touch the bruise until it fades into a place that can never be seen again. Mama, pour all your blood into a thimble and top it off with, why daddy always beating me? And when she grew up, shake that moneymaker. So she did. The breath is a swollen kiss in the eye of a tornado. Black woman. The breath is a copperhead snake under your stairs. Black girl. The breath is 13 children that push themselves out of her body like beautiful bloody fists. But the black girl, child, sister, aunt, mother, grandmother is still breathing. This breath. In each instance, it is the thing we need the most, the thing we take for granted, and the thing that will keep us on. The middle passage breath, the concubine breath, the they killed my son, my daughter for no reason breath. And I am returned. I am riding with my eyes closed in the hull of a slave ship, Portuguese slaves are on top of me. I am releasing my spirit. I am out of body to survive this. I am riding on the salt water, riding to the shark, gazing at us to save me. Seeing the granddaughter born of his blood and not his name, I am riding with my eyes closed, not his country. I am breathing, unpeeled, a historical footnote. A lost moccasin, broken teeth, rattling in me. The breath is my childhood, running in a grassy meadow and dancing on colonized pimento seeds, but I will not die. The breath is a circle of black women strung like garlands around your neck. The breath is a sweat lodge in heaven. The breath is a doppelganger asking, is that my breath or the breath that breathes like me? The breath is wagon trail quiet. African scented slaves crawling around the Choctaw night, ant beds and Filipinos in my hair, holding my urine so their dogs won't smell me. The breath is a beast, ravaging through the body like caverns, like dragonflies in love in that first marriage, first molestation, first bruise, flip it won't let you die. The breath is a river crashing into a mountainside until there is a hole large enough for history to come through. The breath is Latasha Harlan reaching for orange juice. The breath is Sandra Bland's broke silently singing. The breath is Eula Mae Love dropping the knife and turning. The breath is Nia Wilson's cheerleader dreams escaping from her slit throat. The breath is Breonna Taylor sleeping in her bed. The breath is 8 bullets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. silver kisses ending and dreaming. The breathless Ketanji Brown Jackson answering senators' antebellum questions. But she will not die there. The breath is a Black woman, girl, mother, aunt, sister, being refused an abortion. But I will not die here. You will not die here. The breath is a Black woman down. But we will not die here. Exhale. However many generations it takes, you still folding into the pain of loving, of grief, of children who will leave you, of men, families, jobs that deceive you again and again and again, the surviving of them, the birthing of them, the giving them away, the dying, the coming back to life. The breathing, the breath, Black women. The door is always open. You, I, we will not die. You, I, we will not die. So I call this a living poem because now I want you to add your line. You can take out your phone if you have a sheet of paper or a pencil or a pen with you. But add your line, and you can start with the breath. What is something that you or a sister or a cousin or an aunt, some woman in your family has survived, has overcome? And you can start with the breath is, and then write your line. Because that's what it means to have that collective body, right? That collective spirit. And I taught at Campbell University for 13 years, and every time in the first classroom, I would stand up in front of my students and I would say, "What you do reflects on me." And they would say, "No, I said, "Yes, what you do reflects on me, and what I do reflects on you." So that's that collective piece, that collective. So go ahead and add your own. The breath is what? I'll give you 10 seconds. And I'd like to hear something, if we could. The breath is. I love this part. I love when the writing is happening. Does anyone want to read? The writing. Like, I'm too shy. This is a breakfast. I don't think I want to read. Anyone? No hands up? Okay. Like, we're still writing. So maybe what we can do afterwards is collect them. And we can, at some point, collect them, I think, maybe at the front desk. If anyone wants to read what the breath is, they'll get it back to me. And maybe I can incorporate that into my poem. Because this is just one experience, one creative expression of experience, but I know everyone has their own experience. So let's read. Yes, yes.
The breath is giving myself grace and giving that grace to others.
Giving myself grace and giving grace to other women. I love that. Anyone else? Beautiful, yes. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes.
The breath is that I have an obligation to help another sister.
The breath is I have an obligation to help another sister. Yes. Yes. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes.
The breath is striving
That's beautiful. The breath is louder. Right, in spite of daily obstacles. Big and small. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What other person? I saw a hand here. No? Thank you so very much for allowing me to speak in this space. I'm incredibly grateful. Let's read. Thank you. Good morning. Hello and welcome to the 2022 Conversations for Black Women's Justice. Where do we go from here? First, I want to begin by thanking our partners, the Black Women's Roundtable and the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, for sharing this space with us. I'd also like to thank the Kellogg Foundation for supporting and funding this important work. My name is Sophia Lafont-John. I'm Senior Advisor at Oxfam America, and I'm so delighted to be with all of you this morning. You guys look incredible. At this time, I wanted to provide a brief overview of Oxfam's Good Jobs program that enables us to be here today to do this really has committed to improving working conditions for women and people of color. We believe that there should be reliable pathways out of poverty for families. And this work includes raising awareness about issues that face working families, organizing workforce trainings and job placement, and engaging with local companies, employers, and elected officials. We collaborate with partners to draw more heads of households to decent jobs in the workforce. And we know that as families move out of poverty, the impact is dramatic. Access to better schools, access to better housing, nutrition, health, education, and the like. And we do this work at the intersection of race and gender because we know that we achieve change by working together, organizing, engaging in policy, talking to our neighbors and to our friends. And we know that this important work is really important when those that are at the center of it are brought to the forefront to use their voice. Because they, of course, are the ones that matter the most. Before we introduce our fantastic panel to talk about Black women's economic security, I do want to turn the stage to a couple of amazing partners in this work. I would first start with Dee Marshall, who is the Senior Advisor for Entrepreneurship Challenge and Branding with the Black Women's Roundtable.
Good morning. Good morning, gorgeous. Good morning, fabulous. Good morning, beautiful. Good morning, amazing women. And a few good men, give yourselves a round of applause. Amazing women and leaders and champions, and a few good men. Can y'all just wave at me right now? I see you. Good morning. Well, I am not here or standing in my own role. My name is DC Marshall, Senior Advisor for actually take it to the top, the entrepreneurship work of the organization, but I am here to bring opening remarks on behalf of the Melanie Campbell, President and CEO of the National Coalition, and also the convener of the Black Women's Roundtable. For all of the Black Women Roundtable state leaders, leadership in the room, if you could just stand up, right now, a round of applause for And so I will be brief. We want to say thank you so much to Oxfam for inviting us to collaborate, to partner with you in this conversation. We want to say welcome to the program. We are excited to be here to have meaningful conversation, even in a bittersweet mixed energy of celebrating and then mourning and grieving and celebrating. Say amen, somebody, right? We're celebrating a bit of a mixed emotion here, but we are excited to co-convene and to welcome you to an important conversation, and then we'll get on about our business later today. And so a bit about Black Women's Roundtable. Black Women's Roundtable is an arm of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. And under Black Women's Roundtable, our focus is specifically Healthy, Wealthy, Wise program. There is an entrepreneurship program, and there's a leadership program, but all to support the work of women, of leaders, and to co-collaborate and co-convene with some of you in the room. So we're excited to get to know you, to meet you, to see you, some of you again post-pandemic or post-2020, but we're still in a pandemic, within a pandemic. Excited to see you and to have this conversation today. Melanie Campbell will bring closing remarks, so you'll hear from her. And at the end of this first half of the program, we will move to Golden 6 at the end of, actually right at lunch when Melanie comes up, we're gonna move over to Golden 6 for a roundtable with the Black Women's Roundtable state leaders and then Black Women's Roundtable national leaders. And we are excited to do that again, and then we will move about our day. And so we are complete today. Again, we just want to say thank you. In fact, if you have your phone right now, you're online right now, if we could just invite you to share something, say something about where you are today and why you're here, and include in your post or in your text, say something about Black Women's Roundtable, Oxfam, or just that you're excited and happy and open to be, excited to be part of this conversation on Black women's justice today in this room. Because as you talk out loud online, it brings other people into the conversation. Does that make sense? All right, so without further ado, I'm gonna move out of the way, and we look forward to seeing you today. Again, my name is DC Marshall, Senior Advisor, Black Women's Roundtable. God bless you, and we'll see you at the top. Isn't she fabulous? Yeah. Love that energy, DC. I would now like to invite Cassandra Welch to also give greetings from the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable. We've come this far, I say. Come on, y'all. Leaning on the Lord. Come on, y'all. Trusting in His holy word. He never failed me yet. Oh, can't turn around. We've come this far by faith. Good morning, y'all. You do it to me, I caught it, I'm just gonna throw it back out there. Good morning, gorgeous. Hello. So good to be in the room with all of you. Give yourselves a round of applause. It's been 2 years.
bring you greetings from Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable. And amazing partners in the room. Women for Progress is here from Mississippi. Excited to be here along with our National Black Women Roundtable, Melanie Campbell. So just wanted to bring you greetings. Thank you all for showing up and being fabulous. I just love when Black women get in the room because we just show up like wow. Like, yep, here I am, listening. We got some young people in the room. Young people, where you at? We got some in the room today because we are intergenerational. And we believe that this movement has to be built and rooted in intergenerational organizing. So welcome, thank you. Get ready, y'all. Like TDJ say, get ready, get ready, get ready. We're gonna have a good time this weekend. Thank y'all so much.
Gosh, I feel like I have to pinch myself. I can't believe all of these incredible women are in one room. And final greetings from Joshua Hollins from the Louisiana Housing Corporation Executive Director.
Good morning and happy Essex. It is good to be with you this morning. I bring you greetings this morning on behalf of the state of Louisiana and the Louisiana Housing Corporation, where I'm proud to serve as the CEO of our state's housing agency. We seek to deliver safe, affordable, energy-efficient housing for the citizens of Louisiana. I'm honored to join you all this morning because y'all let a brother on the program in this room full of beautiful Black women and the dynamic panel that we have coming in the program that we have this morning to discuss justice. So I want to give thanks and appreciation to the Black Women's Roundtable, Oxfam, and all those that worked to assemble this room together today. You might be asking yourself, well, what does housing have to do with this conversation today around economic security and justice? I will tell you that and submit to you that it has everything to do with it. When we consider the shortage and the need of millions of housing units across our country, it has everything to do with justice. It's safe to say that we are in a housing crisis. When you couple that with the impacts of COVID-19 and now the rising cost due to inflation, housing and its availability and the affordability of it has never been so critical. I heard Mississippi loud in the room today. When you look at our two states, Louisiana and Mississippi, you look at the makeup of our states, we have a lot of rural areas. When you talk about quality, affordable housing in our rural areas and availability for it, it matters. And so it's a part of this conversation on justice. When you sit today in a city, take the city that we sit in today, New Orleans, the housing landscape has changed drastically over the last 15 years. When you consider the cost of homes and the gentrification associated, many of our neighborhoods here have lost the families that were there for generations, lost its identity, and the culture associated with it. And so that's why home ownership, in addition to having affordable, safe rental units and public housing, home ownership and the building of community is important to this conversation on justice. We know home ownership builds wealth and can change the outcomes for families, especially Black families. Unfortunately, we know far too well that Black families often, at 44% of Black families own their homes. You compare that with white families, over 74% of white families own their homes. We have to seek to drive policy that incentivizes developers to build affordable housing, that not only provides rentals, but also drives home ownership that builds wealth, but also builds our communities. We have to look at it from a multifamily and a single family standpoint. And so this morning, as we talk about economic security, the anchor of economic security is it begins at home. When we have wealth and equity in our homes, and we begin to have developments that build our communities, often the catalysts that will drive economic development and bring the economic security to our families. So I'm proud to be able to be on the front lines from the government perspective at the Louisiana Housing Corporation, but I see a room full of advocates this morning that can get in the game and help us to continue to level the playing field as it relates to housing and it relates to building our communities, making sure we have safe, affordable, energy efficient housing, and making sure that our people continue to thrive. So I won't allow a male to stand in the way any longer of these dynamic women that are coming, but happy Essence, welcome to New Orleans, welcome to the state of Louisiana, and we're glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So before we bring our panelists to the stage, I want to handle a few housekeeping issues. If you could please silence your phones, so that we don't have any interruption. And also, I do want to recognize a special guest in the audience. Give me 1 second. It's just. I want to please recognize Trey Baker, Senior Advisor for the White House Office of Public Engagement. Thank you so much, Trey, for joining. He's in the back. We really appreciate your support today. Now, I'd love to bring up my panelists. I'm going to start with Cassandra. Cassandra Welchman, she is the co-convener and lead organizer for the Mississippi Black Women Roundtable. OBGYN and professor at the University. Thank you all so much for joining us. First, I'm going to give each panelist 5 minutes to give their opening remarks. Michelle, I'm going to start with you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Owens. As you heard, I am a maternal fetal medicine subspecialist practicing at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. And so for those of you who may not be aware of what a maternal fetal medicine subspecialist is, we basically for almost 18 years. And we're at the medical center have had an opportunity what I have seen, I think, really amplifies Martin Luther King's quote. And patient population became very interested in the health disparities that the disparities in infant mortality, the disparities in maternal mortality, and just the general disparities in healthcare in general. And so that became one of the things that I was passionate about changing. One of my big questions I always tell my residents is to ask why. And when I thought about why this happened, there really weren't a lot of great answers. And so I guess many of you were wondering why is a doctor on this panel, but I would submit to you that reproductive justice is a social justice issue, and that access to healthcare and healthy living is inextricably tied to economic security, and it disproportionately affects women, as oftentimes when it pertains to pregnancy or childbearing, or even the responsibility of healthcare for their families. that tends to fall on the shoulders of women, especially within minoritized communities. So I am glad to be here to discuss this in more detail, to share a little bit about my experiences and some of the work that I've been doing. We are focused on trying to improve this in a variety of ways, one of which is, of course, in the exam room, one patient at a time, and also working with an organization called Mayhealth, which is a digital platform that is aimed specifically at improving health outcomes for African American women. So this is a platform that focuses specifically on healthcare challenges in pregnancy for Black women. You guys have heard the statistics. We are 3 to 4 more times likely to die in childbirth. And in some areas, that number is up to 5 times, and that's within this country. So in the midst of all of the economic freedoms and resources that we have, we're finding that they're not equally apportioned throughout our country. And so that's why I'm here, and I look forward to the lively discussion. Thank you. Willie.
Good morning. I just want to first thank Potsdam, which is one of the most incredible intentional organizations that empower our state, both Mississippi and Louisiana, and nationally. I'm so glad to be part of this conversation today. Not only is it going to be impactful, but it's an exciting opportunity for us to talk about our next steps forward. I'm Willie Jones, president of the Dependable Source Corp, Workforce Development Center, and DSE Training Academy. And our goal has been for now almost 30 years is to provide clear pathways, not only for higher wage jobs, but quality jobs in the state of Mississippi. And so I'm so glad to be here. I'd like to start my remarks this morning as I was thinking about early this morning, thinking about what I wanted to say in my opening statement. I started reflecting on my own name. I mean, a lot of people know I'm in a business that's considered non-traditional. The type of work that I do is non-traditional, especially as a woman and even as a Black woman. And then I thought this morning, my mother named me Willie, which is a non-traditional name, named after my father. So you talk about destiny and purpose. How amazing is that? So there must be a real effort to the work that you do in Mississippi. For decades and generations now, the term women's work has evolved, but mostly defined for us by others, not the faces or figures that look like me and you. COVID and the recent pandemic has unearthed the value of work and also its many challenges. And this information, both its inequities, its devastations, its shock and grief, but also women's power, resilience, and divine talents to be bearers, catalysts, and transformers. Now we have an opportunity to define for ourselves what the future work looks like, walks like. We have an opportunity to be the builders of our world, the opportunity to move more women from construction workers to architects, to designers, to the blueprint makers. And these recent challenges before us open the doors and blew out the windows and set the stage for us once again to change our world and the quality of life we all live. How do we begin doing and changing the future work? I want to mention 2 steps in this remark. We begin with the smallest of the ones who look like us, our young girls. We help them to strategic in their choices. They must understand there is no boundaries, no one basket from which to choose. They must go for the goal. The word non-traditional means new and different from an established norm, custom, or method. Whether it's transportation, tech, engineering, or new ways to look at medicine or mental health, these are the places where foundation and structures are happening. Lastly, we must find strategic ways to strike down policies that keep many of us in poverty policies that continue to provide traumas and injury to our lives and our bodies. So let's continue to do what we have gathered to accomplish this morning, this weekend, to reevaluate, to educate ourselves, to skill up, and create our own tables for transformation. Thank you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. I've come a long way. I've come from San Francisco, California to be here with you. And I have two very good speakers. I love it. Thank you, Oxfam, for bringing us together. I think I'm the only elected official on this panel, and I'm so fired up to see so many women excited to talk about tax policy. First thing this is incredible because taxes are inevitable, right? You're gonna pay your taxes like you're gonna stay flat and you're gonna die. So that's the one that we know that is consistent. But hopefully throughout this discussion, we'll be able to give you some ideas and some things to be thinking about so that you're able to protect your future, and not only your individual future, your family's future, but also the community's future. So you heard in the introduction, my name is Olivia Cohen. I'm a San Franciscan. I spent 8 years on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors and 3 years on the California Board of Equalization. The Board of Equalization is a $85 billion property tax system. Property taxes are very important in the state of California. It's the second and most highest revenue generator for the state that funds public schools. Any public school kids here? Okay, I'm a public school kid, so we need those property taxes to continue funding education, also putting out fires. You all know, you probably watch the news, and you see California's always on fire. So we need to make sure that these systems are a steady flow of income coming in. The Board of Equalization has been around for 143 years, and I'm proud to say that I'm the first African-American woman elected in the history of California to be in this position. And not only in this position, be here because now what I'm able to do is steer the conversation to talk about equitable distribution of tax dollars and tax policy and how it begins to impact us on a daily life. I'm also really excited to just proclaim that I'm the Democratic nominee for the state of California, running for state controller. Again, my voice in this conversation, not only in politics, but in policy, but making sure that we're talking about equity every step of the way. So I am looking forward to our discussions today, and also want to recognize that I have my good friend here, San Francisco Mayor London Breed is joining us. Two other powerhouse, Brenda Wright and Cheryl Davis, who also run San Francisco with me. Okay, so hold on to your purses, ladies, because I'm gonna bring some fire when we're talking about taxes. Okay.
Sandra, please. Hello, everybody. You talked about purses, so, I'm gonna talk about the power of Black women's pocketbooks. So we're gonna have that conversation today. Before I just say what I'm gonna say, I just want to honor this space and ask us to honor the workers that are serving us today. Really long, because I got a friend to my left who's gonna say, don't go down the rabbit hole. But I just gotta say right now that hotels remind me of my own story. And my own story, my mother is in the room. She was a low-wage worker, many of y'all heard this. A low-wage worker making $2.13. She would have to take me to work with her and hide me in the maid closet with her colleague while she goes out on the floor and change the trash, clean the toilets, mop the floors, and then when she gets done, she would go back into that closet and we would play patty cake together, eat lunch together to relieve her colleagues so she could get out on the floor. And then when my mom couldn't take me to work, I would have to go with my aunt who worked at a hotel, and she was a maid. And she would have to put me, I don't know how she got me in those rooms. I don't know if that little maid smoothing the sheets out and tucking it so delicately for somebody else when she didn't even have money herself to even get a hotel room. And I just remember her saying, only go this far in the room. Don't go by the door. And I could see the part. What's so interesting about this story, that was my childcare story because my mom didn't have enough money to send me to childcare. And now I get the unique opportunity. And what was unique about that is that the hotel was situated right across from the governor's mansion. My mother's job was right across the street from the state capitol, and that's where they made policies. That was the seat of power that could have changed the paychecks of my family. And so we're here in a space like this, so I've got to give it up for all these hotel workers that bust their butts all day long to take care of us, but when they can't even book a hotel room just for their family. So we're gonna talk about the power of the pocketbook for women, not only in the state of Mississippi, but also across this country, because we understand that policy, the policy table, it should look like people's kitchen tables, amen? Amen, it should look like people's kitchen tables. And when we talk about the taxes, you know, we're gonna have that conversation about how that impacts people, women at the local level, gas tax, grocery tax. So we're gonna have that amazing conversation. Last thing before I close, and we're gonna get into this. Today is July 1, and in the state of Mississippi, the Equal Pay for Equal Work law goes into effect today.
Wow.
Don't clap yet. It's not a good equal pay bill. It was branded and shaped like an equal pay bill, but it is nothing in that bill that's equal. It actually favors employers more than employees. And it's gonna contribute to the wage gap and make it worse for Black women in the state of Mississippi and all women in the state of Mississippi. So we're gonna get into that. So we ain't gonna celebrate that yet, but what we are gonna celebrate is building a leadership infrastructure in the state so that we can shift power at the voting booth and at the bottom. All for those complete remarks. And now we are going to get into it. I want you all to feel comfortable. This is a sisterhood conversation, so I do want to get right into the substance of some of these topics because they came to hear too long. Okay? So I want to start with a question to you, Cassandra. Cassandra, Mississippi is one of the worst states in the Deep South when it comes to providing healthcare coverage to people who've given birth. As you told ProPublica, it's hypocrisy to say we are pro-life on one end, that we want to protect the baby, yet we don't want to pass this kind of legislation that will protect the woman, the mother, who has to bear the responsibility for that child. What does striking down the Roe v. Wade last Friday, what does that mean for Black Mississippians? Yeah, what that means for Black Mississippians is that many women are gonna die. It's gonna mean that. Even now we heard from a doctor, a woman came into the hospital with an ectopic pregnancy, and maybe you all heard this story, ectopic pregnancy. And Michelle, I'm sure we'll go into a little bit more details around this. But he could not perform the procedure because he had to check with his attorney. And so for 9 hours, she labored, and she, I don't know how to say it, but something ruptured. And she almost died. But he could not perform that surgery because now he had to check with the attorneys. More and more of that is gonna happen in our communities. And we already know that Black women die at higher rates, as Michelle said. But I gotta say this. Overturning Roe versus Wade is very consequential. But it's about holding on to power. I want to be real clear about that. Holding on to power. This was baked and bred in white supremacy. business. And we gotta call that out. Black women have never, particularly in this country, our labor wasn't valued. When we got to this country, our labor wasn't valued because we had to, but this body was only valuable enough to produce the labor force for the plantations. And so now you want to take away the rights, but we never really had those rights. And so this really doesn't have anything to do with anything but economics and power, but it has consequences for our communities. And so we have to recognize that and we have to say that. And the hypocrisy that exists in the state legislature in Mississippi, we have the votes. ACLU, SPLC, One Voice, so many other organizations work together to get the votes, to count the votes from the legislature to see if we can get a bill out of the House. Because we had it in the Senate. We had the votes, but it was one man, one white man, who said, no, I would not let this bill out. And he held hostage so many other bills to get what he wanted around taxes. And so here we are now living with an incredible decision that's going to impact us across this country. But we had the opportunity to extend postpartum care to Black women, to all women in the state of Mississippi, and they did not do that. So it's going to have consequential impact on our families. But again, this is an opportunity to organize and mobilize.
Michelle, I would like to turn to you because I think you sit at the intersection of maternal health and economic security. In your work and your practice, you get to see the economic pressures that mothers are facing, having to take care of themselves and their children. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing in terms of having to return back to work shortly after leaving work? What kind of impact does that have on the family?
Absolutely. So a couple of things. First, as I said earlier, reproductive justice and the ability for a woman to decide if and when she is going to have children is inextricably tied to economic security, stability, and well-being. In the state of Mississippi, 65% of our deliveries are covered by Medicaid. 65%. The majority of it, in my practice, the majority of patients that I see actually are Medicaid patients. I'm very proud of it. The majority of my patients are Medicaid patients. And those women typically do not have access to health care at all. Or if they do have coverage, it is cost prohibitive because they have to have a very high deductible in order to have a lower premium. And so the majority of those women either don't have any health care at all until they become pregnant, or they still have barriers financially that keep them from being able to access the healthcare system. We have high rates of chronic medical illnesses within our state. We have high rates of hypertension, high rates of diabetes, all of those things that create problems for people who are not pregnant, but compound problems when you become pregnant. And then we have a lot of people who are among the working poor, so lower wage earners who don't have paid medical leave or who have the opportunity for extended postpartum coverage and those kinds of things. So in many instances, my patients have to choose. They get labeled non-compliant because they miss a visit here or there. But it's because they don't have the ability to take off from work to come to their appointments. And so you have to choose whether you're going to, if you are fortunate enough to have stable housing, are you going to keep the lights on? Or are you going to come to a doctor's appointment? If you don't have childcare, we're in COVID, people can't bring their kids to their appointments. So I have a patient, I don't have anybody to keep my children. I had a lady just this past week that I sent to the hospital with an emergency. And I looked at her and I said, I need you to go immediately to the hospital. You leave here, you go directly to the hospital. She said, okay, Dr. Owens. I said, you're not going, are you? She said, well, I need to take care of some things at home. The thing she needed to take care of was her child. She did not have childcare. There was nobody to keep her baby. So she waited until her mother got off from work, came back, got her daughter, and then she came to the hospital. Now, in the meantime, something really catastrophic could have happened, which is always my concern. But those are the realities that our patients face. In this country, 25% of women, 1 in 4, go back to work within 10 days of childbirth. Within 10 days. That's like a week's vacation and the bookend weekends, and they are back at work. Which is different when people talk about 6 weeks leave or 12 weeks leave. That is a luxury that so many people in our country do not have. And the other part is the process of going from a pregnant state to a non-pregnant state takes time. You need time for your body to heal. And if you have pre-existing conditions, or if you develop one as a complication at the end of your pregnancy, you need that time to be able to recover. And many people find themselves either going back to work when they're not well. A third of women in this country don't go back to work after they've had their children. That means that a third of people were employed, had their baby, and then all of a sudden are trying to figure out what they're going to do or how they're going to continue to provide for their families. It is a crisis beyond what most people are aware of. And these are the realities for so many people, not just in Mississippi, but across the country, disproportionately affecting African Americans, Black and brown households across this country. So if you're deciding whether or not you can afford your health care, if you're deciding whether or not you can afford to go to your doctor's appointment versus going to work, if you have the issue of childcare and childcare is not available, that's an additional expense. And if you think about it, if you just had a new baby, what's going to be the process for who's going to keep your child? How's that going to factor in? We're talking about encouraging women to breastfeed. How are you going to breastfeed? Do you have a job that gives you the ability to take the time to go pump? Is there a place to go pump when they send you to the bathroom? All of these different things that are challenges for women. And again, it influences their economic stability.
Of course, these are impactful connections that we need to understand. But I want to just broaden that just a little further. Because when we talk about these types of policies, whether it's Roe v. Wade or the wage gap or other issues, it's about bad policy. Bad policy for the entire states and communities from which we live in. But we don't have individuals who have affordable health care, and they can take care of themselves to where their health is in a place where they can show up every day to work. That impacts our economy, our Mississippi economy, our Louisiana economy. And so when that impacts our economy, and even more so our workforce, we have to have a robust, healthy workforce for our businesses to thrive, for our communities to thrive. So when we think about these particular types of policies, let's keep it real. It is about a lot of different issues that impact us. And we need to make sure we understand and connect the dots to all of it. Affordable health care, we talk about Roe v. Wade, but then there are mothers out there, as Dr. Owens stated, that cannot afford health care. I have a full staff at DSC. I cannot afford the health coverage in the state of Mississippi to provide it in my business, like many other businesses, not even small businesses like mine, but other corporations cannot afford it because of the high cost of healthcare. So when we talk about expanding Medicaid, and we're constantly year after year having a fight for something that should be a no-brainer, not for just communities of color, but for the states that we live in. And when our leaders do not do right, when they do not put policy out there that protects all of the citizens, that's a big issue. And that impacts our pocketbook in a way that we can't even calculate.
Lily, I want to bring you into the conversation. As we discussed last night, budgets are value statements. I want to know, California is such a diverse state, one of the largest economies in the United States, one of the largest economies in the world. How has a state like California, what are some of the victories that you guys have accomplished? And what can other states learn from some of those victories? And what are some of the challenges you think that your state is still facing?
Sure. So California, roughly 40 million people. And we have I think something like a $385 billion surplus this year. We know that it's a high tax state, personal income tax, a whole bunch of taxes, alcohol tax, tobacco tax, railroad tax, property tax. Then there's the insidious tax that I want to touch on, that these ladies are touching on, and that's the pink tax. When there are further taxes that we as women incur just because of price discrimination. So literally, you go to CVS, you go to Rite Aid, you go to Walgreens, and you see something that's pink, like your razors. That same razor that is blue is actually a few cents more expensive. So something that we've done in the state of California is we've gotten rid of that pink tax. And so that is something that needs to be happening on a federal level. The other thing that I'm listening to these ladies talk about are talking about the impact, the economic impact of what Roe v. Wade actually means. Yes, it takes away our right to own and to take our own decisions and be autonomous in our body, but it also does impact our bottom line and our ability for upward economic mobility. And one way that we can begin to combat that is we got to show up. Voter turnout is so apathetic. It is so low that we need to make sure, and I know I'm speaking to a room full of Black women, and we know that we carry everything on the heavy responsibilities. But we got to make sure that our children and our grandchildren are showing up in the voting. We're doing more than just voting, that we're knowledgeable, because it's also about the policies that you're sharing about, the policies that are discussed in the State House, in the policies that are challenged in the courthouse. And so being able to stand up and recognize how things are going to impact us and be organized about our approach is absolutely critical. In California, things are very diverse. We like to pretend like we're so forward and so progressive. And in some ways, we really are. We do a good job, but there are other areas that we need a lot of work on. We've passed some legislation just recently in the last election cycle in 2019 that makes it very difficult on how property is passed on from a parent to a child or a grandparent to a grandchild, which actually does impact generational wealth. So a lot of times people say, well, you talk about taxes, and most Black people are trying to survive, not getting gunned down by the police and try to keep a job. And I agree, there are a lot of people that occupy that space, but there are other people that are also professionals that went to college, that are saddled with student loan debt. I don't know if I'm speaking to anybody in this room, but that also has an impact on our taxes. Being able to take these deductions on our taxes. The tax code, the United States tax code itself has racist notions and biases already baked in. When we're talking about a disproportionate, if you're married, you're incentivized to get married to bring your taxes down. But most Black women, statistically speaking, we can take a random survey in this room, find themselves single and still mothering. The other thing is that if you are married, most likely both of you are working, also paying a higher tax rate, rather than if you were, the American dream, you get married, your husband is the main breadwinner, and you're staying at home with the children. Well, that narrative doesn't always jive in our community, but again, that disproportionately affects our income, our tax bracket, we're taxed at a higher rate because most likely we're married, we're bringing in we have two incomes A lot of our Black men are formerly incarcerated, so finding a job is also, there's some barriers there. So there are a lot of things that, when I think about the economic health of the community as women, as Black women, but as well as the California, these are all factors that come in. And yes, there are programs that have been created to help stabilize and to support, but they're always predicated on the fact that we are poor and that we need to increase home ownership. But where is that money for the first time down payment assistance? And that missing middle, for those of you that did go to college, sometimes the AMI, the affordable median income level, that federal dollars and oftentimes state dollars help families where we make too much to qualify, but too little to actually enter into the market. So there are there's many nuances. And I don't say this to discourage anyone. No, we want you to get out there and pay your taxes. Yes. It's important for the systems to continue to work. Then there are incentives to earn income tax credit, something that will allow women, particularly that have the opportunity to reap some of that as tax dollars back into their families. You're welcome.
Cassandra, I want to kind of go back to you. How has the pandemic shifted the work that you are currently focusing on? Where are you spending your time and energy?
Yeah, the pandemic shifted a lot, as so many of us in the room can testify to how that impacted our families. Some of us lost loved ones. Some of us, which is true in my family, as well. What I found very interesting is this opportunity gave us a moment to really center women and women's economic security and, Black. And it really did elevate, our policy agenda around the women's economic security work. And it centered, again, the importance that women work, but we also are caregivers, and the workforce is run. We are the backbone of the workforce. And so this gave us an opportunity to identify and bring women to the table, right? Bring women to the table to tell their stories, to center their narrative, that they're in control of their own narrative. The media isn't telling it. And so we want to be able to shape we want to be able to shape our own stories. And so what we found that's been really incredible is really talking about the women's pocketbook. And I think we all have talked about that, right here. So from women needing higher wages, women needing access to childcare, women needing access to healthcare, and advocating at the federal level for this generational, one time in a lifetime generational money that is coming down to our households from the child tax credit to the ARPA money that can get broadband into our households so that our families, our children can have internet. So if another water storm happened, like a winter storm happened that left our cities without water, and so many of us experienced, particularly from the city of Jackson, we were left without power. And so what we have been focused on is definitely women's economic security, but also focus on going back to the basics around some number crunching. And what we have found is that a lot, but they're not turning out like they need to in every election, right? And you're gonna hear a little bit more about this, I'm sure, at the next panel, but in every election. And so for Mississippi, we have the highest voter turnout, but in presidential elections, not at these local elections, right? And we know local elections matter because we get an opportunity to elect our judges. And our judges can become Ketanji Brown Jackson or a Clarence Thomas. Wow, right? And so elections matter at this local level. And so that's the kind of work we've been focusing on. And what we have been seeing is that it's been hard for women to get out the vote, though, when you're struggling with all these issues. If you got 2 or 3 jobs, right, they're really tired. How am I gonna get to the voting poll when I gotta go back to this job or go to the next job just to make sure food is on the table? Like, those are real issues. That's what we found. That's what we saw during this pandemic. They couldn't pay their rent, they couldn't pay their light bill. We had an 80-year-old woman to call our support. She was 80 years old, and she called, she said, "Man, I'm ashamed." She said, "But I need some help." And it was cold in January in Mississippi. It was really cold. She had been out, her lights were off, her gas was off, had been off for about a week and a half. And I was like, "What are you doing?" She said, "Me and my son are just huddling up." And he has a disability, so she was having to take care of him. And she was 80 years old. She shouldn't have to go through that. None of our elders should have to suffer through that. But that's what we have found. And that's why I think it's so important to have amazing people like the People's Institute who raise money to, and then give it to us so that we can leverage our dollars to put back into, it's community that's saving community. So those are some of the things that we've been working on and doing, and also trying to make sure that, again, that our women are holding our elected officials accountable for how they do the policy, because again, the policy table should reflect.
We're gonna have closing remarks by each of the panelists, and I'm gonna start with Lily. My question to all the panelists is, what in this moment is giving you hope? I think sometimes it really feels like it's a very dark, rainy day in America. With inflation being as high as it is, with the very conservative Supreme Court that we have, and many other issues. So what keeps you in this work and motivated every day?
Oh, that's an amazing question, because we've been talking about some heavy issues today. But I want all of the women here to understand that we can be jumping for joy today. You know, the pandemic was just that. It was a pandemic. We as Black women were the most impacted by it. But I tell you, there were some stories that came out of the pandemic, and women are saying no more. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to the brick and mortar. I want to spend time with my children. I have found out, because I've had to care for my children and homeschool my children, that the public school education's got to be better. They have said that I am tired. I am not going to work 2 jobs anymore. And I'm willing now, and I'm ready, that I need to skill up, to stay committed, to reach out and that I've been able to use. Women are coming out, and I talk to women every single day. It is hope, it is joy, and yes, will there be challenges? Will the road be smooth? No. But women are saying, no more, I'm not going back. And that's exciting news for all of us, especially those of us who run organizations, who are women-led organizations, who are looking for those women to link hands with us and get out here and do the work. But it's because it's going to require us to have a backbone like we have never had a backbone before. We have to be brave to do what we need to do moving forward. And when it comes to the workforce, there are opportunities out there for women. When I hear from women all the time, this is our time. This is there's opportunities out there for us. But don't go to sleep on it. Those are the opportunities. We got to share those resources. We got to strategize around those resources and make sure that they're impactful and that they're giving us the outcomes that we need. And the bottom line is, I want to say finally, we, yes, need our tax dollars working for us. We work for it and we pay those taxes. So those taxes, they gotta come back to us to work for us. Don't let folks say that's welfare. If we look at this opportunity or this grant or whatever, that's welfare. There's folks who've been, doesn't look like us, been getting welfare for many, many years. It is much more than a couple $100 a month. It's millions of dollars in subsidies. And I can say over and over again how that particular welfare has benefited folks that don't look like me and you. So get the real answers, make sure that we stay informed, make sure that we are working together. That's gonna be it. Us working together, linking hands, and that wall that they talk about that Black women have between each other. Let me tell you what, COVID and the pandemic broke it down. Broke it down and threw it away, and women are stepping all over because they're calling on each other and they're working together in ways that they have never worked for before. So I am so excited. I jump up every day, shouting in joy, because I know the women that I'm going to be faced with every day. And every single day I am hopeful because there is another face, there's another opportunity. But get your resources together, make sure that you're equipped to not only help yourself, but help the others that you come in contact with. Thank you.
So that was actually a really good question, because I had to think about that after the Supreme Court decision, specifically as it pertained to the overturning of Roe, because I'm a and you had asked Cassandra earlier, you know, what does that mean in Mississippi? And she said it means that more women will die. And that is true. And that hurts me because I didn't do this because I like to see women die. I did it because I like to see women live. And I'm so tired of seeing poor women suffer disproportionately. I'm tired of seeing them die. And one of the things that gave me joy was being part of the solution as opposed to being part of that problem. But the truth is that in Mississippi, not much will change because we already had to get permission from people to provide standard care. If I was in many other states in the country, I would have to go and ask a board of people, many of whom look nothing like me and have no idea what that is. What their challenges are, for them to get a stamp or seal of approval to regardless of how we feel morally about termination of pregnancy, in which pregnancy is a life-threatening condition. And women don't get pregnant by themselves. Shift where there is the full responsibility of a joint situation, regardless of the circumstances of which that takes place, is going to be fully borne on the backs of women. That's a concern, because now we're talking about a potentially life-threatening situation. Feel some kind of way. it made me fearful about the health and well-being of people that I take care of. It made me concerned about the ability to practice medicine and to have the sanctity of the patient-physician relationship in those conversations and decisions being influenced externally. And so I was worried about being able to stay hopeful. But the thing that has really given me hope is really the response, right? So better late than never, right? And the fact that people realize what this means, and I have sisters and colleagues and friends and allies all over this country who have reached out and who have said, you know what, despite the limitations of the situation that we're in today, this is not going to be the end. And we are going to continue to fight. We're going to fight for equity. We're going to continue to fight for access to health care. And we recognize that when we do this for the least among us, that everybody benefits. And to hear that resonate so widely across this country, even people who would say, I don't personally believe that, and that's not a choice I would make, but I recognize the importance of it being available and that it is healthcare, and that is, as a part of healthcare, it's something we gotta deal with. Those have been the things that have given me hope. It's given me hope that we're having these conversations. It's given me hope that the medical establishment is starting to look introspectively and recognize that racist systems and bias is having an impact on healthcare and on patients that disproportionately affect Black and brown families. Those are the things that give me hope. I waited almost 2 decades to be able to say those things. I walked halls where I could be mistaken for housekeeping, despite the fact that I had on a long white coat and a stethoscope around my neck. I have been overlooked in physicians' lounges, questioned when I went to the faculty dining hall in my own hospital, because they didn't expect somebody like me to be in that position. And now we're having those conversations and we're talking about it. And I hope that with those conversations comes more dialogue and more understanding, and not just talk, but real action. So I am waiting with anticipation and excitement about the actions that come from the realization and the conversations about what is going on now, and our collective desire to move toward a more equitable and just society.
Andrew, back to you, and then Malia, close out.
First, thank you, Michelle, for all you do for the state of Mississippi and for women across this country. Thank you. Thank you. What gives me hope is seeing all of you all here and being here in this space. You know, Black women have always been survivors. We will continue to do that, and we will continue to thrive. But I gotta say, I want all the young people in the room to just stand up. All the young people in the room, just stand up. No matter where you're from, just stand up. Can y'all just shout out for some more hand claps? They give me hope. They're here in this space. They're asking critical questions. They're standing up in front of the Supreme Court saying, my body, my right. They're asking questions about how do women get a particular kind of project in their communities so that they can have more access to things. They're analyzing and questioning critical race theory and saying no, and speaking truth to authority and leadership.
they're saying these things, they're coming into their power. That gives me a lot of hope, and I'm excited there. And let me just say this to the elders in the room and the other Black women in the room. My daughter came to me actually this week, and she was just crying. She was sitting at the table, she was crying. And I was like, what's wrong with you? We just had a good time, we just went shopping. Well, I went shopping, she just went with me. And she said, someone just said, Mama, I wasn't a Christian because I believe that it's a woman's right to have an abortion. She just started booming. So of course, being the woman I am, I just took authority over that spirit right quick, first of all. And then I had to tell her, get off social media. But what I want to say to us, when we hear that kind of comment, women in the room, let's check that. Because we don't want for our young girls to be, they already getting it in the world anyway. But we don't want anything to damage their growth, their spirit, their power, limit them. So women in the room, we hear that kind of foolishness. Can you check that? Can we commit to check that right now in this moment? Because they're growing, they're finding their power. But we also gotta be careful what we're saying, particularly as women of faith, and even having men saying these things. Can we just commit to checking that kind of mess? So no other girls will feel like questioning their faith, questioning their self-esteem. Can we do that in this moment? That gives me hope. Thank you.
Moments, I just wanted to say what gives me hope and what renews in your spaces like this. Thank you very much for this convening. You have seen convenings happen in the last week and a half across the entire nation, and technology is really doing a great job of connecting us. And what gives me hope is that there is an opportunity in this crisis, and it's for all of us to find it. And if you don't need to be an elected official, you don't need to be running an organization, and that we have the authority within us right here, right now in this space, in every station where we occupy, where we are. You don't need to wait for permission, you take permission. And I think that we need to step into this space and be bold and be honest. This panel, all of my the President and CEO of the National Coalition of the Black Women's Roundtable to give her remarks.
Good morning. It is still morning, right? It's been a long morning. Okay, we got about 2 hours. It just was so wonderful. So look to your neighbor to your left. The hey girl or guy. Hey girl. You look gorgeous. So to the other neighbor. Hey girl or guy. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm gonna be very, very brief, and I'll make closing remarks. But I want to first thank Oxfam for America for reaching out, and in absentia, Joy Owens, Norwood. Can we give our sister Joy with Oxfam? Sophia, so y'all will give Sophia a wonderful for stepping in and pulling this together in this beautiful room in the midst of Essence Festival. We are together, y'all. Still wear your mask, still check folks. We're not gonna make this a super spreader event. Can I get an amen? All right. We have and one more thing. Tell the person to your left, you're a special guest. You're a special guest. And we also have another sister special guest who's part of our administration. And it is my honor, as I struggle with my
my information here. To introduce the sister who I just earlier found out, she's from Louisiana. She came home visiting. I want to say thanks to Mrs. Sylvain, who leads our Louisiana Youth Coalition. I believe the honor is today. Black Women's Roundtable in the state of Louisiana. But Shalonda D. Young is a director, Office of Management and Budget. Yeah, I'm gonna say it again. She's the director of the office. Yolanda oversees the implementation of President Biden-Harris administration's agenda across the federal government. Before her time with OMB, she also served as clerk. And I think this stuff I think really important in the conversation we're having around issues around economic justice. She served as clerk and staff director for the House Appropriations Committee, where she oversaw 1.3 trillion annual appropriations bill. I'm saying 1.3 trillion annual appropriations bills, necessary disaster aid, and major aspects of the COVID-19 related spending. She previously served as Deputy Staff Director, Professional Staff Member, Subcommittee Clerk, and Detail Lead. She's a native of Southern Louisiana. She moved to DC nearly two decades ago to serve as a Presidential Management Fellow at the National Institute of Health. She holds a master's degree from Tulane University and a Bachelor of Arts degree from Loyola University in New Orleans. She's lived with her family, including her young daughter Charlie, in Washington, D.C. So welcome home. And just tell us what you want to see. Appreciate it.
So one, I'm back home. You should know, Essence says, what party with a purpose. When I started in college, I did more of the party, so I'm happy to come full circle to more of the purpose part. I have to pitch myself. I'm from a small little town outside of Baton Rouge, Clinton. If anyone has ever driven through to get to Mississippi, I don't think people like me with my background did these jobs because I didn't see it. So part of what my job is for my 8-month-old, for the young people who just stood up, is to show you that people like you do get these jobs. And it's not because of who your family is, what your last name is, it's because we're just good. Amen. My daughter, I get to not do what my parents did. I'm sure many of yours did, so you had to do better than everybody else. We shouldn't have to tell our kids that, but that is what we grew up hearing and believing. That got me here, but I truly hope that I don't have to give that same lesson on the way out to kindergarten. But my guess is I probably will. But in this job, I want you to know that somebody from a similar life experience to many of you gets to sit down with the president and decide what his budget looks like. And Joe Biden will tell you, don't tell me your value, show me your budget, because that's what you value. And we all, if I didn't get to hear things like this, we have to get out of DC. We have to come to events like Essence. We have to hear what matters to people. We have to hear, I loved hearing a mention of the rescue plan broadband money. We need to tell people what is available to them. Because why do it if people don't know how to access it? And we have a lot of rescue plan money. Part of my job is not just deciding what to propose to Congress as the president. But after Congress passes it, and you heard I used to work on that side of this thing after, how we implement it, because we end up with a lot of discretion. So how we build equity into these programs. We do about $700 billion in contracts with the federal government. Who gets those contracts? Who do they look like? That's what my job is to decide. So I'm here to let you know, as much as I can, I got your back.
I've never spent a night away from my child till last night, because this event is important. And it is